Great. All right, guys. It's been a while since I've caught up with you guys. How have you guys been doing? You guys do anything fun last night, or just stare at the screens like I did, crying?
I like the shirt. I like your
Oh, I did.
shirt. I didn't know that
Thank you.
started.
Thank you. Thank you.
I like
That's
that.
my passive aggressive way of dealing with elections since I can't vote. So no, I'm
Well,
just kidding. I love I
Brad and
love the
I are
results.
Brad and I are both in heavy red states. I don't know. It's well, voting, not voting. It's all about the same in South Carolina and Texas.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, my camera got all fuzzy. That's probably a good thing.
You are a little blurred, yeah. Out of.
It was
It was
good.
fine just a few seconds ago. Yeah.
Oh well, it'll come back. I hope. I don't know. My wife told me I was in charge of kids yesterday, so she could kind of zone out. And right when I was supposed to take over, I got a terrible decision out of San Francisco and was banging my head against the wall for a while. So she took care of the kids, and but it. As Steven said, I live in South Carolina where
Yeah.
it was like 0% in called for Trump, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, to redeem South Carolina, the representative from not my exact street, but a few blocks down, because we're so gerrymandered, is going to be, I think, chairwomaning, if that's the right word, the committee on UFOs coming up here in a couple weeks. So, I mean,
How
Nancy
appropriate we're
Mace,
talking about an Area 51, Brad.
That's why bring him in. EADs, UAPs. I just try to help the audience.
Nice. Did it go the way you thought it would? But did you guys expect it to be this red?
No,
I was surprised. I mean, I'll be honest. In 2020, when I was following the elections, it was all red, and then I went to sleep. I got up in the morning, it was blue. I was like, whoa.
It didn't go. I think it was last Friday. Kamala Harris was in Houston, campaigning with Willie Nelson, Beyonce, and all that. And yeah, that's a heck of a concert.
Yeah.
And it was very odd to see a national candidate in Texas that late. And so I thought maybe there's something here.
Yeah.
There wasn't. I did not expect that we would have results overnight last night. The vibe kind of was it was going to take a little bit, and then two, I thought it was going to be a close Kamala win. It's kind of that's what we had been told.
Yeah.
In all the news and everything she was going to win. It was going to be close, so we weren't going to get the repudiation of the Trump politics, but I prepared myself that this was where we'd be today.
I don't know. I think she only campaigned for 90 days, right? I mean, I was reading that somewhere. I mean, for 90 days, I think she did pretty well. I mean, for entering so late in the game, I don't know. Would it have changed if she had more time? Speculating here, but giving it the
I don't
benefit
know
of
if
the
it would
doubt.
have gone better or worse.
That's another way to look at it. Yeah.
I'm interested what your takes are, more so than ours, because we're kind of, I mean, obviously we feel for our clients, but we're just kind of the objective representatives, right?
So I kind of knew. I mean, we had this running bet within our friends. I made $20 because I called that he would win right off the get go. I mean, it just. I think if you spend enough time on X, on Reddit, and a couple of other forums, you kind of get to understand what the sentiment is that's going around. So I kind of knew that we would. Did I think that he would win by such a large margin? And what scares me more than him winning is the fact that Senate is red, and it looks like the House is going to be red. That scares me, right? That is something as an immigrant, I'm like, okay. What I'm hopeful about is the fact that we've got Elon and Vivek and Tulsi. They've been saying sensible things about high skilled immigrants, right? If we usually never spoken about. Right? In every conversation, we're like bundled in under some. Or they'll talk about the border for 95 minutes, 95% of the time, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, H-1B, yeah, let's kick them out," and that's it, right? But for the fact that they actually spoken about it, like in his couple of his podcast appearances, Vivek seems to know what an H-1B is, or the fact that there's a lottery to get an H-1B. Like I don't think anybody knew about that except him.
Well, and Elon certainly does. I mean, his company's,
Yeah, yeah. Elon. So the fact that these figures are associated with Trump makes a
this
couple of
was
us hopeful.
one of the things going back to 2016. The thought was, okay, Trump always tends to surround himself with good people. So what I'm curious, what we're going to have to see is on the immigration side, does he side with Vivek and bring Vivek and Elon in, or does he bring Ken Cuccinelli and Stephen Miller in? And those two sides are very
Yeah.
opposing.
I mean, the last two names keep me up at night. Like Stephen Miller. Oh my God, him and yeah. So and another scary thing is the fact that a lot of people who are associated with Trump didn't really last the entire 4 years, right? So that I'm like, okay, these guys are there and they mean well, and Trump seems to be like, I'm going to bring about change. These people deserve this. So the Indian or the high skilled immigrant community seems to be very hopeful. Brad, just to sum it up to answer the question, everyone's very hopeful. Yeah.
That's good because a couple of things. One, the only time, the most pointed example of high skilled immigration being brought up that I thought just was precious was when there was that one day of people saying that Elon worked illegally and was an illegal immigrant, and I kind of laughed it off until you saw articles in major news outlets with Ayla's finest attacking him, right? Former presidents coming out and being like, "Oh, that's ridiculous," and I'm like, how hack can you get, frankly? And I'm not going to say anyone's names. There's lots of them, so I'm not going to. But
it reached a point where he himself came on Twitter and said, "You know what? I was on this and I moved to whatever J1 F1 whatever it did."
Yeah,
I was like, oh my God, it reached that an extent that he actually had to come on X and justify.
Well, it was just so much like politics over practice there. Like, come on, this is what you do for a living. You help people in the employment-based space, and the first opportunity you get to get your name in the paper, you're going to throw someone under the bus. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
That really frustrated me. But the second part, is this hope. I'm really glad to hear that because, I think as Stephen and I have kind of lived through one Trump administration, a lot stays the same.
Yep.
A lot more than most people think. It's just, the parts that Democrats hide, the Trump will tweet about and be proud of and get loud.
Yep.
Right. And, but I mean, again, I said this earlier when I was talking to CLE, and I think it made the crowd angry because it was a bunch of lawyers. I was like, look, I was technically, I worked for the DOJ during the Obama administration. I wouldn't say I worked for the Obama administration because I was just a civil servant.
Yep.
And, since I left there and I've been arguing against them, they make the same arguments that we did under Obama. They made the same arguments under Trump. They made the same arguments under Biden. And that's for like 98% of this stuff.
Yep.
Well, I think that's been one of the frustrations, in this niche community Brad is in, and I dabble in with litigation, where we see things. It's like, here's an opportunity for the government. They're presented with a problem. Here's an opportunity to kind of fix it, and instead they are taking the same stance that you would expect, the Trump administration to be taking, because it's all about conserving the executive powers that be. And no matter the administration, you go back and look historically, they're going to want to expand and protect executive action
Yeah.
Regardless, I mean, go look. I mean, a good example, and not Brad or I, but the diversity visa case, right? The diversity
Oh
visa
yeah.
case came
Yeah.
about under the COVID visa bans from Trump. The district court judge sided with the diversity visa lottery and said, we're going to reserve X number of visas. The Biden administration appealed it and fought it all the way. And they could have said, oh, we lost.
Yeah.
Wash our hands of it.
But so maybe I overspoke a little bit at the start when I said everyone's hopeful. There's a good percentage of people who are hopeful, right? But I wanted to add that there's another section of the community, right? People with spouses on H-4EAD, people with kids who are about to age out. These guys are very scared, right?
Yep.
Oh my God, are we going to move from a double income family to a single income family? It's my kid. What's going to happen? Like, are they going to, make the rules more stricter from the aging out process? There was something about him ending birthright citizenship that he mentioned once or twice, right? It's like if they do that, the amount of the documented 3 months is going to like multiply by 5 overnight, right? If he does something like that. So these are the community section of the community that's scared. The people who are hopeful, people who've come here for who've done their graduate school here, gotten their bachelors, who their spouse is on a separate visa, another H-1B. These guys are just sitting in the backlog waiting for their green cards to be stapled their degrees and sent home, like you said. But so these are the people who are hopeful, and then there's a fair section of the community who these folks were scared, and so yeah, it's a fair bit. I realized when I said that people are hopeful, I probably should clarify a little bit and just speak about the other folks as well.
But go ahead, Brad.
Go ahead, Stephen. No, go ahead.
I noticed that. I was going to ask you. I thought, I saw on Twitter today a lot of division, especially with the Indian backlog community. It was pretty, maybe 60-40 one way or the other. But there was a certain, definitely some that are like, well, shit. Like here we go again. Like, great. It's not going to get worse.
Yeah. So it's the folks who've had to be, who were impacted on the travel ban, who are scared about their kids. I've gotten like 5 or 6. We run a small WhatsApp community group for the Area 51 folks, right? They have been getting questions from folks like, hey, you know what, my kid's aging out. What's going to happen? Or hey, you know what? If we have a kid here, is he going to remove our birthright citizenship? Like, what's the deal with that? Well, for a lot of folks, it's kind of sad. It's now become this immigration pathway where you have a kid, and then at the age of 21, the kid files for you because that's faster than going for an EB3 or an EB2 at this point, right? So that's another potential block, and everything else that was done for the against the dreamers of the H-4EAD. So I guess the 40% of people. I saw more folks hopeful than less, maybe because it's my feed. But so the folks who I saw were like more apprehensive with probably the folks in these buckets. And we were just doing a live stream with a bunch of others. Like someone else was there who's constantly collaborates with his name is Padma. He's extremely hopeful. He's like, what can go wrong, right? Like you said, Brad. Like, how much worse could he get? I mean, with these smart people on his team, maybe, just maybe, it could get better. So that's the spectrum of folks that we're dealing with right now. Yeah.
Well, and a couple of things, and I don't want to get. This is a casual conversation, so I don't want to get lectury, or not like I'm lecturing anyone, but like give a lecture on like teaching.
Brad, the professor, guys, for the people who don't
know. This idea of birthright citizenship going away, I think it's best viewed as rhetoric. There's no chance in hell their theory gets adopted by the most ardent anti-immigrant Supreme Court. And again, I just jinxed everyone, right? But I truly do not. I truly think that's an argument that looks really good on its face, and as soon as you open the cover of that book, it's so clear. It's not even funny. I don't even take that.
Isn't that a constitutional right, Brad?
So
it's in the Constitution, right?
I did some digging for Times of India on this. Luna had.
Damn, Stephen, look at you! Nice.
So it's the way they've interpreted the 14th Amendment, and all people born here or naturalized are citizens, and that Supreme Court 1898 Chinese Exclusion Act case, guy born here travels, comes back, and like, you're not a citizen. Because your parents weren't.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well settled, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the 14th Amendment comes out in 1868. It says anyone born here and quote subject to the jurisdiction thereof acquires citizenship on birth. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof, people who want to claim, oh, well, if you're here illegally, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
Oh,
however,
okay.
The recognized interpretation of that term going back to English law and Roman law is that two people fall outside of that category. You are not subject to the jurisdiction of a country if you are officially a diplomat, right? If and you hear
so
about
you're
these
saying a
news-
child of a diplomat in America is not considered an American citizen?
That's correct. If
Wow.
they meet
Okay.
the definition of diplomat, they have to be on a
Okay.
blue list from the Department of State, and these are
Okay.
going to be higher ups at consulates, and they know
Interesting.
this.
Okay.
In DC, when I lived there, at least once a year, some ambassador's son went out, got drunk, got in a DUI, and was quickly ferreted out of the country. Because they can't get in trouble because they have this diplomatic status, but
Immunity,
that's why
right?
they don't acquire citizenship.
Gotcha.
So that's been a recognized exception since, we're talking like English subjectship law. The other exception are called, quote, enemy aliens. So that means literally if Russia invaded the United States and then they had kids, right, while they are hostile military inside of the United States, those children would not acquire birthright citizenship.
I see that.
Those are the two recognized exceptions, like in time memoriam.
Yep.
And the language is pulled, almost specifically from, like, again, English law from the 1700s. And so the one case Stephen's talking about is called Wong Kim Ark. And basically it said you were born here. However, the facts of that case were that his parents were here lawfully and were longtime residents.
Gotcha.
So the people who are against birthright citizenship argue, well, those are not illegal people. Those are people that the polity has consented to be here. And so their children become citizens, whether they are citizens or not. And so, Wong Kim Ark is a limited holding. And so can they argue it and then go up? Yes, but they're going to lose, in my humble opinion. So I read way too much on this back in the day when I was.
No, it's useful. This was an actual concern. Yeah, for a lot of people.
I was trying to think about this in kind of and I agree wholeheartedly with Brad. I think this is DOA. I don't think this has any chance. But let's play the devil's advocate here. If you look at what Trump has been trying to push against in his campaign, what's on his website, there were really two things that he was attacking on birthright citizenship. And it's, what they view as birth tourism, people coming in on a beach.
Okay.
And illegal immigration. I did not see rhetoric where we're talking about long-term lawful visa holders. And again, this is the hypothetical that if they get this through, I think it would be a narrow view of what does subject to the jurisdiction thereof mean.
Gotcha.
And that's a huge uphill battle.
Gotcha.
I'm not terribly worried about birthright citizenship.
Gotcha. Since we spoke about that for so long, the natural segue for that is documented dreamers.
Stephen, you've got a visitor.
You need to go to bed. my child made his first Lego set by himself.
Oh, nice! I still do it.
Yeah, it's like a little Minecraft.
I'm 31.
Excited to be moving things around. Yeah. He's supposed to have been in bed.
I'm working on the Avengers Gauntlet of Infinity right now. So.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, no, we've been playing some Minecraft in this house.
Yeah, well, sorry. But yeah, do the document. The next segue question I had was for the documented dreamers, right? Do those guys? They're concerned. I'm in their groups. Do those guys have an actual reason to worry, because I know that they were pretty targeted pretty heavily in the last
You know,
administration.
I think the only change we really saw during the Biden administration, because we haven't seen law changes, is what they viewed as the sought to acquire and when you qualify for the Child Status Protection Act. Prior to the Biden administration, it had to be that your final action date became current.
Yep.
And the Biden administration said, hey, we're going to kind of shift it here. And we're going to take it that if your immigrant visa petition is approved and you filed a 485, you're good, right? You've sought to acquire, you're protected under the Child Status Protection Act. That's how it's been. I don't know. That was about a year and a half in. So maybe Trump goes back to the old way of, it has to be the final action date. But the big changes for documented dreamers has to be Congress.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is I don't think it's going to get worse for documented dreamers. Unfortunately, I think it's going to stay the same, unless something happens. And on the something happening, this might sound trite, but I will give an example. If we think of the next 4 years as a crisis, right? And a lot of people do, because I represent a lot of people outside of the high skilled immigration context, and they are freaking out.
Damn, you're cheating on us, Brad. Just kidding.
I will say what's interesting is a lot of my clients are stuck in a different backlog because they're from India. So for what it's worth, but if you look at, I don't know if it was Obama who said this, but I feel like he had a famous quote of saying, we can't miss this crisis. We have to use the opportunity it presents. And, when, so I go back to 2020. It was when the height of like the incredibly high H-1B denial rates.
Oh yeah.
There were 2 memos out there, and they were really doing damage. I mean, they were approving H-1Bs for 3 months at a time. So by the
Stephen
time
had 1 day, right?
I had a 1 day approval.
Stephen had a 1 day approval, and my old firm brought a case, and I got really involved and wrote up the briefs and everything. And we went in front of a judge in DC, and it was during the Trump administration, and it was in 2020. So it was like spring. Well, I guess we did 2019 was the argument. And at one point we had a full courtroom of H-1B employers who happened mostly to be Indian nationals. And at one point she looked at the government attorney and said, "It's pretty clear you're just trying to hurt these people."
Oh, really? Okay.
She's coming from this place of, she watches the news.
Yeah.
She knows what the hell's going on, right? And she knows who the president is and the agenda he's pushing. And we won that case. And because we won that case, this might sound like hyperbole, but the denial rate, first off, short-term approval stopped, and the denial rate went back down to normal levels of like 10 to 14% rather than like 30%.
2% right now.
Well, and
it's 2% right now. Yeah.
And again, I don't think it's an exaggeration that case had a significant impact on the denial rate. But that, I think, is a good example where this crisis, gave us an opportunity, a better opportunity in front of a judge, because the judge is not living in a vacuum. And
didn't they want to remove the DACA program? But so the thing is, the last administration, I wasn't as heavily invested in keeping up with this because I hadn't entered the race yet. so I thought the whole program was under threat under the Trump administration last time around.
DACA?
Yeah.
Okay, so DACA, yes, and then Biden came in, but it got ruled ruled illegal again during the Biden administration by one of Stephen's neighbors down there in Houston.
Was it
Judge Hanen?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I honestly don't know the status.
He retired, right?
Now.
Yeah, I think he retired.
No, he's on one of my current cases.
Oh, okay, there was someone else who was not very supportive against the Dreamers, I think.
So there is a lot of judge shopping in Texas by the Texas Attorney General. He knows how to get the judges he likes.
Okay.
I don't know. I know there was litigation. I think there was a hearing with the Fifth Circuit somewhere.
Okay.
Truthfully, I don't do a lot of DACA cases, so I just haven't
Gotcha.
paid as much attention to it. I know that's a group that's very nervous because
Yeah.
it's a regulatory construct, or not even a regulatory. Excuse me. It's a
Memo.
policy construct.
But I will say, I really analytically, I don't see a connection between the documented dreamers issues and the undocumented, the true, the DACA, right? And so I don't think one's a bellwether for the other because they do come from very different spots.
Gotcha.
But I also, I've been heartened by seeing it seems like there's a lot more organization going on in the green card backlog community.
Yep.
In no small part to you guys, right? The Area 51 folks are just putting smart people in rooms together.
Thank you.
And I don't think this is a controversial statement, but it feels like there's been this one PR strategy from the backlog community. It just hasn't worked. And again, it's easy for me to blame because I haven't been involved in it. But
there's a lot of, it's like Marvel Civil War going on.
I think there's in terms of the documented dreamers, a couple things that give me hope. One, this last immigration bill that I thought was negotiated and then killed at the last minute included provisions for the documented dreamers, and that was a negotiated bipartisan deal that ultimately Trump didn't get his way, so he got some folks to kill it. I can also say I've sat in with meetings, with local congressmen here in Texas, and look, it's not at the top of their agenda, but it's on their immigration agenda to talk about the documented dreamers. Their view is, one, it's a fairness thing. Why? I can tell you one specifically. His quote stuck with me. He's like, I don't want people who, in my view, did things the wrong way to get treated better than people who did things the right way. And not sure where I stand on that, but that's his belief. He's in Congress, not me. But I could tell you, I think there's some interest in this, especially as we see these documented dreamers. One, they're very well organized and doing.
Oh yeah, Improve the Dream is fantastic.
Improve the Dream
fantastic.
Is a tremendous grassroots, but it's also very sympathetic. Look, I came over when I was 6, 7, 8 years old.
Absolutely.
No one thought it would take 15 years to get a green card. And these are people that are doing good things in colleges, in their high schools.
So we had our last episode was with Deep Patel, right, from Improve the Dream. So he is a pharmacist now. He just got his EV to NIW. He's been here pretty much his whole life, and now he's at the end of the backlog. I'm like, damn, Deep, you've been here since you were like, I think 7 or 8, and now he just got his NIW, but he was born in India. So it's like another 30, 40 years for him to get his green card. I'm like, it's like your whole life.
It's okay. We've determined his job is in the national interest. So, it definitely makes sense that he can do it in 30 to 40 years, right? Like that.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's our immigration system, right? It's kind of like how Schedule A, we know there's a shortage. But you can't do this job for another 30, 40, 50 years.
Well, I really like the tweet that you put out, Steven, regarding the fact that the next 2 months, the government can pretty much pass as many executive orders as as they want to. Like, they don't have to worry about anything, because unless the new administration comes in and revokes all of it, I think that's possible too, right? So.
Well, but I also think, and this is what I put up on the Eagle Act and the stuff in the backlog community, that the lame duck sessions are, again, been in meetings, and everybody said nothing's going to happen until after November, and when we see the election. But now these lame duck sessions, you have representatives, senators that are out the door, and they just don't care anymore. They do whatever kind of makes sense to them because they're not beholden to donors or to the electorate.
Yep.
You've got people that are like, well, I just got reelected. I got another couple years I got some time here to do some things. So, a lot of people I think saw yesterday as kind of the pinnacle, and I think it's really the beginning of anything. And I know, look, everybody in the backlog community has been burned by the Eagle Act in Congress. I mean, many, many times.
Yeah.
But one, I think this is a time to try to push it. We've got this duck session, and two, get to know if you have a new representative, a new senator, go start meeting with them now to try to build those relationships.
Yeah. That's a call to action, guys. Everyone tuning in, call your senators and representatives and just explain what's going on.
She's busy uncovering aliens from not this earth. Okay, Raul. All right, she's a little busy this month.
What's the Martian backlog gonna look like, Brad?
What's the Martian backlog
on that? I mean,
not good. Not good.
It's Stephen, one thing that really cracked me up is that, and this just shows how bad the backlog is. You post your monthly visa bulletin insights, right?
Yeah.
One month you did EB 1, 2, 3, and then you did 5. I think you forgot the religious workers, right? And then there's a bunch of folks comments like, please don't forget about us. We're also stuck in the backlog. And I'm like, oh my God, a priest from India has got to wait. He's got a priority date.
So EB4, I separated out because it's very unique. But
right.
Was it last summer?
No, it was just once. You usually do it. It's just once. And then I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, these people are in the backlog too. It's not just tech workers.
What was it? Last summer, Brad, that's when they redid the EB4. Yeah. Anyway, sometime last year, they did this recalculation and it's thrown EB4 completely in a loop. And what makes it weird is that R1 for religious workers does not allow the same extensions like an H-1B,
right?
Just like L1 doesn't, right? So you have these clergy members, rural Texas. I've met immigrant Catholic priests, and preachers, and they have to leave. They have to leave their congregation. There is no chance to stay longer. So I again feel bad I left them out.
No, it's just once, and I know it was fine. I mean, just once, but it just, for me, it opened up a whole avenue where I thought like, oh my God, these guys are affected too, right? It's just ridiculous. But okay, since we spoke so much about H-1B, I'm going to go back to a topic that a lot of people are waiting for. What do you think the impact is going to be in the H-1B? Because I know I'm going to sum up a couple of things, and thanks, Stephen, for that quick summary that you sent me in the email. Wage levels were extremely high. It was so high to a point that someone graduating with a master's degree probably would not even qualify under the lowest tier, which was easily, I think, 130, 140, something like that. I remember panicking because this was when I was in school. I think when I had just started working, the months leading to my first H-1B lottery, and they put these rules around. Like, holy shit, there's no way I'm qualifying for this. That was one. The fact that they want to prioritize people based on how much money they make in the lottery, that was something that they tried to put in towards the tail end. But I think as soon as Biden came in, he, I think, stopped that from happening. Increased site visits, RFEs, denials. Do you think we're going to look at a repeat of all these fun statistics in the next 4 years?
So I think one thing we are likely to see is the proposed rule for the H-1Bs that basically tries to put back in those memos we got rid of, but do it in a regulation. And they did a proposed rulemaking of that, if memory serves. I don't think anything happened after that. I don't think it got implemented and enjoined, if memory serves. It just never made it that far. But I mean, what
all did they cover in these memos?
So this was like employer-employee relationship.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I remember that. Okay. Yep.
And that sort of thing, and gotcha. Worksite locations. It was their list of things that we had gotten invalidated. And I do think that if there's something that's most likely to come up that would be my first thing, because they've already got it written. They've got to redo it, issue another notice of proposed rulemaking, and then go for it. And that would be consistent with their, we're looking out for H-1Bs.
Yeah.
We just want to get rid of fraudsters, right? We want to get rid of the cheats, that kind of thing. And then the second one that's most likely, in my humble opinion, is a raise of the wages again. And my old firm is we brought one of the cases that got that stopped, but it was going to be devastating. I mean, the wages went up, I think 3 or 4 times what they were supposed to be, and they had no real rationale, and it was absolutely absurd. And then, of course, that also impacted the perm side of it, right? And that was even more problematic. My big question, right, is whether they're going to now be good at rulemaking and have learned from their mistakes of last time. I also think, to your point, Raul, where you said, we know the Republicans are in charge of the Senate. So that means all the cabinet level positions are actually going to be secretaries, not acting secretaries. Yeah. And while that might sound hyper technical, I can't tell you how many bad regulations got stopped during the first Trump administration, because this is going to sound really weird, but this is exactly what happened. Under the appointment clause of the Constitution, you have to have been appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate to carry out certain duties, including signing off on a regulation.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, the fee increase got immediately booted for that reason. It didn't go into the substance. When I say fee increase, I mean the overall, like, just application fees.
Gotcha.
The 2019 fee increase.
Yeah, 2019. It went into effect. They sued on it, and multiple courts said, well, unfortunately, you have to have a confirmed Secretary of Homeland Security to sign off on this. Otherwise, it's gone. I don't think we're going to have that benefit, at least for a couple of years, if ever. And so that does it takes away kind of what I would call like an easy win or a procedural win. And then you have to deal with substance. And again, I'm talking too long, but the substance is where rulemaking is a public thing. And that's where a crisis can be an opportunity, where we can comment, we can FOIA, we can organize kind of during that process, and be ready for a challenge.
So if they propose a wage rule like this, and literally everyone on an H-1B sends a comment saying, you know what, this is not good, would they actually look at it and say, you know what, let's not proceed with this?
So when they do they do a notice of proposed rule, a comment period, and then they do a final rule. The final rule doesn't have to address every single comment, but it has to address, if you get 100,000 of them, it has to address it as one thing, right? Because it's a major or material comment. And their explanation has to be rational and reasoned, right? And that might, it depends. But the better groundwork you lay in the proposed, or in that process, the better chance you have. And I will say this, it takes a lot longer to go through 200,000 comments than it does 2,000 comments. And at some point, the other thing we know about this next administration is it's one and done, right?
Yeah.
And so, at some point there's a strategy of let's just get through 4 years. and then see what's on the other side.
And this is something I just want to make clear. Like, Brad and I are all for higher wages for H-1B workers. Everybody go make the money. What it was is the calculus that they were using was not backed up by data. It was going to put people out of work because they were going to get terminated. I mean,
that's right.
It wasn't sustainable at any level. So I'm all for, pay people more money. Make sure you guys are being treated fairly on the wages. But this was going to put businesses out of business, and people out of jobs.
Because the problem was, this is from someone who actually had to go through it, right? From a tech standpoint, if you're working for like Google, Amazon and stuff, some of those salaries are pretty attainable. But then you've got other disciplines, right? You've got a mechanical engineer, you've got a manufacturing engineer, right? They don't see these kind of salaries, right? So, so if they are going to put wage levels, at least like Steven said, right? Get some data points, understand. Like if someone in California in a tech job probably might be pulling a couple $100,000, but a mechanical engineer, say in St. Louis, Missouri, or like Nebraska, somewhere in Nebraska, is probably not going to do that, right? So,
And
those are,
ironically,
yeah,
they need them in Nebraska more than anywhere else
yeah,
because
yeah,
lack of it.
yeah.
lack of it, exactly. So these were a couple of concerns, and I have a question from someone, a friend of ours, Padma, who keeps coming on the podcast, right? So the H-1B rejection rate, we noticed that it was somewhere in, I think 24-30% in Trump during the Trump administration, right? Do we have data on out of this percentage, how much of them were like people who were like defrauding the system? How much of them were people who were just routinely going through their regular renewals, 3-year renewals, or first time renewals and stuff like that?
I could tell you that at our firm, we saw, right, the increase that everybody saw. I don't remember seeing one for fraud. I mean, we saw some. I mean,
Right.
that come up, but it wasn't a substantial increase. I think there were a couple of things that came up, especially around specialty occupation.
Right.
They had this 1 degree rule. If you said the position could take a degree in computer science and software engineering or a closely related field, that was so so far removed that it couldn't be a specialty occupation. Brad, did you ever get statistics on the fraud?
So if you remember, the Trump administration did a lot of public disclosure to shame businesses
Okay.
and shame people, which ended up being great to
Right.
get the material. There was the H-1B hub that you could now go to and see all sorts of data points, which was nice.
H-1B hub. I'll write that down.
So they one of the things they put out was like, and Steven, do you remember, it was like top 10 reasons H-1Bs get denied.
Mm-hmm. They put something out like that? Damn.
Yeah. And I just Googled it real quick, and just to give you the actual numbers, I'm looking at the denial rate. So 2016, 10%. 2017, 13%, 2018, 24%, 2019, 32%.
Yeah.
Let's see. And so, hold on. I was looking for the actual memo, but
I vaguely remember that. I've got an article here someone did based off of it. It was specialty occupation, right to control, level 1 wage, third party, and deference. But I remember there's that actual memo out there. And I remember fraud being very
listed out. Okay.
On there.
And another question that we got a lot was, could H-1B renewals fall under these rejection statistics? Like, I did my 3 years. I'm on an I-140, and I'm on my 5th 3-year renewal. Is there a possibility that I get rejected?
Yeah, so one of the things I think was, there was a lot of talk about this invisible wall during the Trump administration, right? What did we not?
Damn, that's a lot of walls.
Really see, right? What did the public not really see? And one of the things that I think created a lot of complications was he got rid of this deference policy.
Yeah.
USCIS for a long time had, hey, we'll defer to the original, the last H-1B unless we have a reason not to. And so right now, if you filed your extension, they're going to look and they say, okay, this is all the same as the last one. We're going to approve it. Instead, during the Trump administration, every petition was basically viewed like it was brand new, like it had never been filed before.
Gotcha.
And so even if you've had 5 H-1B renewals saying you qualify for X job, now maybe that adjudicator who may or may not have a bachelor's degree, definitely doesn't have one in your field, now might say, I don't think he's qualified.
Yeah.
And I don't have to look at these other ones. I mean, I think that deference memo was a big...
It's back in place now?
Problems.
Is it back in place now, or is it still...
So the Biden administration reinstituted deference.
Okay.
But again, we'll see. I felt like that was one of the early things the Trump administration got rid of, is they got rid of the deference policy.
Which again, the side effect of that is, instead of going, oh, you've been approved 3 times. I'm going to approve the 4th one because everything's the same. Think about how much time it takes to do
Yeah.
that new.
I
Right?
was
And
just
so,
telling them the previous stream, like take an already slow agency and then make them slower by making them do things that don't even actually value. Like,
well, and I will say something that cracks me up is Stephen. So I have a client. His name's Stephen Brown. He filed a FOIA request, and they didn't get back to him in time, so he hired me to sue the government on his behalf. And we just got.
I hope Steven gets the friends and family discount.
Yeah. He's a rich lawyer. Long story short, I was flipping through the slides while we were just waiting to hop on here, and I found one. I put it up on X that says, for a renewal EAD, there is no legal basis to deny it if it's filed on time.
Oh my God.
How many people did we represent, Stephen, in H-4 EADs that filed them on time and still had huge gaps in their work authorization?
Yeah. And their whole thing, right, was what if we deny it?
That's right.
And we can't do Rahul, you think I'm joking, but every time when we argued you should give the automatic extension, the 240 days,
yeah,
the H-1B. Well, what if we deny things?
I mean, in a logical world, it'd probably be an online form that someone can fill out maybe 3 times or something, and then every 4th renewal or something, do the whole paperwork just to make sure that it's legal, something of that sort. You know what I mean? Think of it for every renewal. That's just ridiculous.
The H-4 EAD was so weird because if the H-1B was approved, the likelihood of the H-4 being denied was nominal. And then the likelihood of the H-4 EAD getting denied, the only times we saw them pop up in the litigation were cases that were blatant misapplications that were fixed really quick.
Yeah.
I will say this too. I do think the significant number of adjustment of status filings from the fall of 2020, right, when the priority date, when Charlie pushed it up to 2014 for a couple of months.
Charlie works with Joey right now. I found that out recently. I got a kick out of it.
Oh yeah. Oh, Charlie's great. So keep in mind, in 2016 through 2020, that 100,000, 120,000 people didn't have that protection in place. That's different now.
No.
And so if all these H-1Bs games get played, the long-term folks who, and I'm not suggesting the long-term folks should be, well, you know, I just think they have more connections to the United States, more liabilities, more mortgages, all that kind of stuff than somebody who's been here for 2 or 3 years. Not that they should be treated
children, homes. But,
yeah. But they're the ones who are like the devastating stories. Like, I'm stuck. I went to see my mother who is sick. I'm getting paid 1/3 of what I should get paid.
Yeah.
You know, I have a house, 3 kids, all this kind of stuff. They're not going to be in that same position because they do have this backup of the adjustment of status pending. Now, you know, and that provides work and administrative, or excuse me, advanced parole. So that's a good thing. It doesn't take care of the problem, but I hope it at least provides a little bit more protection for the folks who, again, have significant stakes in the game, right?
Do you think getting EADs or approved I-140s or someone just coming and saying, hey, let's make everything current right now and start over fresh, do you think these are likely possibilities that someone could expect? Because there's a lot of people putting their hopes on things like that. Like, hey, yeah, we will get EADs very soon. Or, you know what? Somewhere in the past, I think, I don't remember which administration, you guys probably know, I think someone just made everything current and started all over from scratch. Did that happen in the Bush administration or something like that?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
You know, what's interesting, and again, this is back in the 90s. So right before the tech bubble, right, when we didn't know it was a bubble, right? If you look at the statute,
right,
they increased the number of H-1Bs from like 65,000 a year up to 250,000 a year for a short period of time. Then it went back to 65,000, right? I think they could do something like that, where they say, we've got this need today.
Gotcha.
Right? And so for the next 5 years, I'm making this up, we're going to give out 300,000 additional employment-based visas, right? We're going to clear out the backlog over the next 5 years and then effectively start it new, right? But
So they could do
again,
something like that. Okay.
oh yeah, in a heartbeat. But that's got to be a statute,
Yeah, it's
right?
gotta go through
And
Congress.
that's going to take Congress.
Yeah.
The regulatory fixes, I think, are much more likely, if anything. And I like, how do I say this? The country cap is the problem here. We all agree with that. But that's been a stubborn thing to get rid of.
Yeah.
There are other ways to fix it and keep the country cap in place.
Such
right?
as?
I mean, why can't we have relief just for Indian nationals? If we got Indian nationals out of the employment backlog, right, it would free up so many visas a year for the rest of the countries.
Which
right?
are now facing backlogs, by the way.
Right.
Much less, but.
And I also think if you're focused on and again, keep in mind, there are a lot of country-specific immigration benefits. You know, when Australia sent troops to Iraq in 2003, whatever it was, they get, what's it, an E3?
Yeah, it's the E3
so it's an H-1B just for Australians,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Singapore has the same thing. Chile has something like it, right?
Yeah, the H-1B one.
And that's more a.
So I guess this would be an intergovernmental discussion.
You got it. That's more of a,
Okay.
you know, India's diplomats getting with U.S. diplomats and pushing.
It's interesting you say that because every time Modi is doing one of his Howdy Modi visits and stuff like that, right? Everyone keeps asking what is something that they can do, right? And a lot of times, a lot of politicians, I mean, a lot of people have said that, hey, you know what? There's really nothing you could actually do to influence another country to do something for you. But what you just said, that's actually really interesting to know.
So let me give you one other idea. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stephen.
But sorry, all the e-visas are treaty based. I mean, that's one thing. You know, the U.S. doesn't have an e-treaty with India.
That's right.
I have not dug into the geopolitics of why, but that, you know, all these entrepreneurs that want to come in from India could, you know, if we had that treaty, could help. Now that doesn't solve the green card problem, but to Brad's point, we have country-specific immigration that's out there. It wouldn't be this.
Fun fact: Deep initially from the founder of Improve the Dream, he actually came here on an E2 visa. He's a Canadian citizen, so they have the investor visa. So I think obviously it's not a dual intent visa, so it took him some time to jump from that to this. But since you mentioned it,
it depends. State Department or CIS whether it's dual intent. Just for the record.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing, I mean, to your point though about I-140 EAD, you know, I think we've seen the Wash Tech OPT litigation play out, the H-4 EAD litigation play out. You know, I think you could argue with AC-21, right, that the intent of AC-21 was to allow more freedom for worker mobility and interpret that in a way to grant that EAD and advanced parole. Now, it's going to take rulemaking, but that can be done without Congress. It's just going to take an administration that wants to do it. And that'd be great because I think you free up think about how more efficient Department of State could be if you have the backlog community on advanced parole where they don't have to go for visa stamping.
This sounds pretty nice for us too.
Yeah.
Well, but I think I really like Stephen took the words out of my mouth about the E2 thing. If there was a diplomatic coming together, let's say you had a president who wanted to make a deal, right? You know, United States gets something in exchange for that treaty. I don't know what that looks like. And India gets something in exchange. And an E2 is you perpetually renew it as long as you want.
That's it.
The other thing I think about, the other thing I think about a India-specific solution, right, is we're focused on high-skilled immigration, but there are 40,000, 50,000 Indian nationals stuck in the U visa backlog.
Yeah.
Right. And again, some of those are high-skilled folks, right? A lot of them are small business owners.
Yep.
And so you can, I guess you have this coalition that's all from one country of, hey, we've got the high-skilled folks over here. We've got victims of crime over here. And those are two different interest groups that might come together where they otherwise, we put humanitarian immigration over here and we put, you know, high-skilled over here. There's also a crazy number of asylum applicants from India right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, getting the humanitarian people together with the high skilled people, now you're starting to get both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there's hesitancy to say we don't want something just for our country, our nationals. We want to fix the biggest problem, right? Which is country caps, and I agree with that. But at the same time, if we take care of Indian nationals who are stuck in these ridiculous backlogs,
Yeah.
those other things will abate.
So, two questions. I mean, first is a comment more like I was reading the Congressional Research Service, right? They published a paper actually. They remove country caps. They're not effectively been solving the immigration backlog. You're effectively spreading the backlog to the other countries. So effectively, if you remove it right now, within a few years, anyone is going to have like a 7 to 8 year backlog to get
That's right.
things. So,
and this is something you and I have been talking about this about rhetoric. I mean, every single one of these bills about removing country caps has this ramp up provision where it's like, hey, the next 7, 8 years, so you're not, there's this idea that you're going to be cutting out British nationals and they're going to be stuck in a 10-year backlog. I think isn't necessarily true. Eventually, maybe maybe, but right now it would be a ramp up period. The last Eagle Act had that 7, 8 year ramp up before it removed.
Yeah. So the reason I brought that up is that we need allies all across, right, to actually push this through. Many times this is the place where we fail to give them a satisfactory answer, saying, hey, we're being selfish right now because of the fact that we're asking something only for our country. Why should someone else go through another 10-year wait just because you guys want to get it faster? So I'm glad you mentioned that it is a ramp up period. So it's not something that, hey, you remove it and then tomorrow someone coming in from England is going to wait 25 years to get a green card. It probably won't be like that, but that's where we fall short. And
we could also update our numbers from the 1970s. I mean, maybe this all made sense in the 1970s in our.
I approve. Wearing this shirt, I approve your tone.
I mean, look, we're dealing with an immigration system that largely was developed during the Cold War. Middle of the Cold War, and we're a very different world now.
It's like we're being penalized because our population's too high. It's like that's effectively what it is. The Australian case that you mentioned for folks when they subsent, did that offer them a path to citizenship, that E3 or whatever you said, or was that just like unlimited renewal?
The E3 is basically an H-1B for India for Australian nationals. It has a cap of I think 10,000. It's never been met. They can consular process instead of going right through USCIS, but it's a specialty occupation visa just for Australian nationals. So that negotiation was, well, we want in on this, but we don't want to have to deal with the caps of the H-1B.
Right. So do they have a path to citizenship, or is it just constant renewal?
No, they could go through the green card process. It's an employment-based non-immigrant visa, just like an H, an L, a TN, anything like that.
Gotcha. Is it possible that, like the H-1B1 or something, if the governments intervened, they could create a separate visa class and that had its own separate 7% allocation of green cards?
Green cards get trickier only because the statute is so much more detailed. If you go through the Immigration Act, all of the non-immigrants are the actual law. Each one is like 2 sentences, and then a vast majority of that comes through the regulation. Immigrant visas are kind of the opposite. Like there's so many sections on details on what they have to be and how they have to. I mean, there's still a lot of regulations, but Congress has just demanded so much more, and so it's much less wiggle room, especially with numbers.
Gotcha.
But I guess my whole point of kind of harping on an India only solution is like, I guess what I want to start thinking about is if we can't get rid of country caps, what can we do? What else can we do? What's a different approach? What's something that will practically solve the problem, just not in the way we're thinking right now.
Yeah.
Right. Stephen will tell you this. I have a problem when I litigate. I really want to win the big issue. Right. But I don't have to. I can win, the second or third issue and still get everything.
Yeah.
But I want that big win.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm still going to
That's
go for it, but.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. Yeah. I feel like our strategy and messaging of late, when I take a look back and think about it, I feel like we probably could make that a little better.
I think the messaging, from my end, I think the rhetoric has gotten a lot better over the years. I mean, I can tell you it was very toxic at times, which I understand. Like, this is stressful. This is people's lives, their kids' lives. I mean, I get it. The rhetoric, I think, has gotten better, but I think, something's got to be done. I don't know what that is. I'm not a lobbyist. I couldn't even get an email back from my own congressman at one point, so I'm not the guy to, ask. But there are people that do that specialize in it.
Gotcha. Taking a turn for something positive. We've spoken a lot of all the negatives, right? What are some positive things that you think could come out of the next Trump administration? I'm sure there might be one or two things. Right?
One thing that I've been talking about, I think if he stays true to his word, we'll continue to see a prioritization of national interest waivers and EB1s for these emerging technologies. And when you look at what the Biden administration did, they said, we want to be winning on AI and emerging technologies, right? And we are going to really prioritize that in our EB1 adjudications.
Okay.
And, when you look at Trump and he wants best and brightest and he wants to beat China and he wants to do this, that I think is something we can continue to see and maybe even expand, more, where he wants to be the global winner in those tech fields.
What about you, Brad?
For the legal immigration side, if Trump makes good on his promise to deport millions of people and secure the border, right? He's going to claim victory on that at some point.
Yep.
Right. Whether it's actually there or not. And as horrendous and terrible that will be for the people who are caught up in it, and it will be. It'll be real gross. It'll be heartbreaking. At some point, he'll want to declare victory on that. And every one of these people's stance is secure the border, then we'll fix legal immigration. And if they get that predicate just for rhetoric and just for politics and just for ego, then we can start talking about this, apparently, right? And the big obstruction is gone. Now, that's me trying to find a silver lining on what I would think is the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Right. But for the high skilled community, if there is reform on the legal side, I do think they're going to be at the top of the list for reforms, which are pro high skilled immigration, for exactly what Stephen just said.
Gotcha.
Right.
That is the big ghost in the room right now. There is nothing when you talk with some of these, this has been the issue going back years and years. You have folks on the Democratic side, they don't want to talk about high-skilled immigration because they want protections for, the other side. Republicans, want to secure the border before we talk anything else. And so, to Brad's point, and again, I don't wish this on anyone, that's going to be the first domino that has to fall before before some of these things can happen. And hopefully somebody finally realizes these can be mutually exclusive. And
I know
you can talk about reforms to high skilled immigration and then also do that at the side. But
because it's unfortunate to say it. I mean, just adding on to what you guys are saying, right? It's like speaking for the community now, right? It's like for us to see any positive or changes to our condition, we've got to sit and actively hope that there's another section of the community, who probably not probably worse off than we are. They're like their conditions made even worse just so that we are able to see light at the end of the tunnel. And I often when I sit back and take a look at it, I'm like, damn, I feel horrible thinking about this, right? Because it's like it's like, what do you do?
Well, and I will say that's why I was like very hesitant to even say what I just said. But
Yeah,
it's like I'm going through my head, what's the worst case scenario? But
yeah,
a little
yeah.
a but C to that, right? Is the recent EB-5 legislation that went through in 2022, right?
Mhm.
That was a pretty much a standalone immigration bill that they've been trying to do for years, and it got attached to an appropriations something, and it got through, right? And it was intense lobbying
Yeah.
from two very different sides of the EB-5 side. There was, and again, EB-5 world, a whole nother.
Do you think the
world,
EB-5
but,
world will get impacted? Since you mentioned it.
I do
Okay.
because embedded in the EB-5 off, there's a special office just for the EB-5s called the Immigrant and Investor Program Office, the IPO. It has FDNS embedded in it, so fraud and detection, national security. And man, those guys can find fraud anywhere. They look at this white wall and it's fraud somehow.
Man,
And
I've had FDNS email saying it sent notice of intent to revoke for my client saying your attorney said X, and I've got the freaking email printed out that I said Y.
For EB-5?
Not EB-5, but FDNS.
Okay, it's just FDNS. Oh wow. Yeah, I mean that's something else that ramped up last time, right? Yeah.
Well, and I'll give you an example. I looked at a denial yesterday. So there's certain countries, it's very common in the EB-5 world, certain countries in Asia where you can't just send your money from that country to the United States to invest. And so there's this cottage industry of money changers or exchangers that are all legitimate, where you pay someone in Vietnam, China, one of these countries, you put the money with them,
over here, yeah,
and then they pay in the U.S. This was the basis for the denial. Well, we know you got your money lawfully, but you gave it to company A, and then company A paid on your behalf. We don't know where company A got that money.
Oh my God.
Are they your dollar bills that went in that came out? And it's like, are you?
Yeah.
Curse word, kidding me. But that is the influence of FDNS over there, because they're going, oh, something's funny here because this is different, right? Yep. And it's like, you guys don't know how banks work. And again, I know that's not a bank, but it turns out money is fungible, right? Yep. But that kind of stuff. So yes, I do think. And then the 2022 law, again, it's called the Reform and Integrity Act, right? And so we've already had them try to terminate a bunch of regional centers and put thousands of investors at risk because they don't know how to operate in a new law.
Yep.
And so, but I don't think any area of the employment based or investment based is going to escape. Yeah.
So I was just looking. I'm going to boil it down to our last two questions, guys. We've been talking for a while. So I know it's Project 2025. A lot of folks are extremely scared about them. That whatever was listed in the document, we've all read it. Trump has officially distanced himself from that multiple times. Do you think? Again, it's purely speculation.
I'm gonna give my 2 cents. Brad has a lot more clients that are impacted, but Trump has distanced himself. But the person who wrote the immigration section was Ken Cuccinelli, who was the senior official performing the duties of director of USCIS under Trump. Okay, and a lot.
If he's watching, I like him. Yeah, he's watching.
A lot of the Trump has said he's not. I don't know anything about Project 2025, but he has a lot of allies who do.
Yeah, Miller ones. Yeah.
So I'll let Brad's done. I mean, a little bit.
So one, I think President Trump was probably telling the truth. He didn't know anything about it. I mean, that's a lot of pages to read. There's a lot of pages.
900 pages.
Yeah, and I like this stuff, and it's still incredibly boring. But I mean, Project 2025 goes after the most vulnerable. That's their priority, and I do think day one policies are not going to impact high skilled immigration, right?
But
That's
it is
more
a
like,
reality you should keep an eye
it
out
doesn't
for.
mean we should ignore it,
Okay.
but I guess this is my incredibly cautious optimism. I do think now that Trump's got his second term and he can't do another term after that, I would not be
Yeah.
surprised to see a break to the middle to make everyone try to like him.
Yeah.
Right. And he thinks he's going to do that by, being harsh
Oh,
to the most vulnerable. But
that's a nice
also,
way to put it. I thought you were going the other way. I said he doesn't have to worry about anything else. He'll probably just, go all out and just kick everyone out. So.
oh no.
I was like, that's why I was like, oh.
Because again, from his perspective, he can say, I was great to immigrants.
Yeah.
I brought in all the tech workers all the companies needed, right? And they created more jobs for Americans, whatever.
So that's a good imitation.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Terrible. But that's I guess my very, very
Gotcha.
unjustified
He
optimism.
likes to be liked. I mean, at the end of
He
the
likes
day,
to be
he
liked,
likes to be liked.
Last question, guys. People have been asking, do you think we need to go ahead and get our renewals done, or things around that nature in the next few weeks before January 20th or 21st? Are there any advice that you want to give immigrants
So this
tuning in?
was a thought I had this morning, and I put up a tweet on it, is that in the first week of the Trump 1 administration was the Muslim visa ban. And yes, that primarily impacted 7 countries, but that was very quick and had a lot of lasting impact. And I could see if Biden comes in with a viewpoint that Joe Biden has been open borders, approving everybody left and right. At the consulates, there's a lot of power. I don't think a lot of his impact on USCIS adjudications came until later. A year 2018 was the February 2018 was the big memo
right.
that you litigated. So that was a year later. But the consulates give me a lot of pause because it's also not a place. Sounds self-righteous, but attorneys have no power with the consulates. Very limited power to protect people at the consulates. And so I would prefer my clients be in the U.S. on January 20th, but I'm also not going to tell people to skip funerals and weddings or anything like that.
Because there are a lot of folks who have their H-1B due for renewal in the next 6 months, and they're pretty much eligible to go ahead and do it. And I was like, yeah, man, just do it. Just knock that out for you. Good for another 3 years, right? Why do you want to have that hit you in the middle of, in a year or so, and then you're like, oh my God, it's denials, RFEs, whatnot. So that was the intention behind the question.
Yeah.
Is this a valid concern for people, or are we just randomly freaking out?
I lost the case challenging the H-1B ban, or our firm did, I should say, and it was tragic. I mean, the stories of folks, again, going home to see mom who's sick, getting a ticket for 2 weeks, and not being able to return for 8 months, 10 months. And it was just, so I agree with Steve. Unfortunately, because who knows that, and again, there was no notice of that. It was just issued. And, everyone had all their appointments lined up. Everything was good to go. And then it all went to shit. And, and again, we're rounding this out. That's the part of the next 4 years I don't like.
Yeah.
It's the part where folks doing everything right are scared. And there's very little I can do to reassure them because of the uncertainty. And that's what I was telling I only have 2 people that I work with. And I was telling them both, I'm like, look, our clients can be freaking out. The best thing we can do is just listen and say, look, we'll be there with you every step of the way, and we will. But we don't know what January 21st is going to look like, or January 22nd. all we know is what tomorrow's going to look like right now. And so let's prepare and let's, get as much as we can before.
Yeah, no, solid
January
solid
20th.
advice. Yeah, and for everyone listening in, I know that the tone that the three of us had when we were talking was a little more negative, or it was not intentional or intended to create fear or panic. We honestly don't know what the next 4 years looks like. Trump's got a brand new team. He doesn't have to worry about a pandemic. So it's not like, yeah, knock on wood, knock on wood. So it's not like there's a fire burning and we're all gonna die. So we
There,
just want to, yeah, we just want to talk about it so that you guys are aware, right?
Dude, and I think
Yeah,
that's the thing is it's being
yeah,
aware and
yeah.
knowing and planning.
Yep, exactly.
There there is a chance that things could go positive. We talked.
Absolutely. Yeah,
There are a lot of people who are like,
yeah,
"Let's go, baby."
yeah.
Um,
I'll be texting you guys, hey guys, I just got my AD and I'm gonna get my green card in 2 weeks. Yeah.
yeah, like
You never know.
there's that. There's still that possibility. It's just
Yeah.
what Brad and I have talked about all throughout today when we've been texting and when we talked this morning is what did Trump 1 look like?
Yeah.
And to our clients, because I don't know what Trump's gonna do in 2025. I have no clue.
Yeah.
I'm not in those meetings. I just know what he tried
That's
to
not
do
in those
2017
meetings.
to 2021.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I would be okay with him making his vice president the border czar, and telling J.D. Vance to figure this out.
yeah.
Because he has sympathies towards India,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah,
His
it's
family.
the chief minister of the state that his wife's from has already congratulated them.
Oh.
Apparently this is funny. I don't have to. I don't know if I don't have that. I saw the tweet myself, but this is even different. I saw this article. The village where her family is from have already reached out to her asking for support. Now this I need to validate, but I saw this as an article. I don't know if this is true or not, but yeah, good luck. Good luck to the new administration. And I mean, he's got cool people. He's got some cool, awesome people on his team. So you never know. And Stephen Brown from Reddy Newman Brown and Brad Banias from Banias Law, guys. If you guys are tuning in, they are awesome. They keep coming on our show. If you guys need support, feel free to reach out and ask them. Probably see them very active on Twitter. And I think probably the best way to reach you guys is probably through your website. Is that better? Yep, through your website. And yeah, Steven knows. A lot of people come and ask me, and I'm like, yeah, go to Steven from Reddy Newman Brown.
Yeah. The website's the easiest
Yeah,
way.
Yeah. So
well, thank you, Raul, for setting this up and letting us.
Thank you for coming in, guys. It was pretty short notice, but I'm glad you guys came in, and I'm sure a lot of folks tuning in probably felt. I hope they did feel a little better after listening to you guys. So, but until the next live stream, guys, thank you. I'm going to stop the live stream right now. Hold on.